I was humiliated at my workplace, insulted in front of customers, treated like I was nothing. But years later, I returned to that same building with a pen in my hand and ownership papers in my name. If someone told me years ago that I'd own the restaurant where I used to scrub dirty plates until midnight, I'd laugh. Back then, I was just the dish boy, invisible, exhausted, and dreaming of something better. But today, they call me boss. I started working here when I was 17, not because I wanted to, but because my family needed money. While my friends were out partying, I was in the kitchen, hands soaked, back aching, listening to customers laugh from the other side of the wall. Welcome to Raw Reddit Tales. Subscribe to keep getting the spiciest stories. I remember every face that looked down on me. The chefs who tossed pans when I was too slow, the manager who shouted just to hear himself talk, and the waitress who used to mock my torn shoes. Her name was Anita. She was the kind of woman every guy in that place wanted. Confident, sharp-tongued, and beautiful enough to make men lose their logic. But I was just the boy who cleaned after her shifts, invisible to her world. Still, I noticed everything. The way she flirted with the boss for bigger tips. The way she rolled her eyes when I greeted her. The way she laughed when he called me the kid from the gutter. I told myself I didn't care, that one day I'd walk away from all of it. And I did. I saved every naira, every tip, every breath I could, and the day I walked out, I swore I'd never step into that restaurant again. But fate has a strange sense of humor. 6 years later, I came back. Not in uniform, but in a black suit, holding the papers that made me their new owner. When I walked through those doors, I saw the same faces, only older, warier, and quieter, except Anita. She was still there, but something about her eyes that night felt different. There was a flicker, not of arrogance, but of fear, and that was when I knew. My story with this place wasn't over. Not even close. Anita froze the moment she saw me. For a second, her lips parted like she'd seen a ghost. Then she smiled, that same fake, sugar-coated grin she used to give customers when she wanted a bigger tip. "You look different," she said, her voice shaking slightly. I just smiled back. "So do you?" I didn't tell anyone right away that I was the new owner. I wanted to see how they'd treat me, who they really were when they thought I was still beneath them. The old manager, Felix, barked at me to move the crates that had just arrived. I nodded and did it, quietly stacking them in the corner. But this time, I wasn't angry. I was watching, observing. Every insult, every sneer, I filed it away. That night, after closing, I dropped the bomb. I gathered everyone in the dining hall, cleared my throat, and said calmly, "From today onward, I'm the new owner of this restaurant." The silence that followed could have frozen time. Felix's face turned pale, one of the cooks dropped his ladle, and Anita, she just stood there, blinking like her brain couldn't process it. "Wait, you? What?" she stammered. "You bought this place?" "Every brick," I replied. "Now let's talk about how things are going to change." I expected gratitude or maybe a few apologies, but instead, I saw fear. Felix quit the next day. The rest stayed, except Anita. She came to my office that evening, dressed up like the woman I used to dream about. She smiled, leaned on my desk, and said, "You've really changed, haven't you?" I didn't trust that smile. Not anymore. But something about her eyes pulled me in. We talked for hours that night, about the old days, about how miserable life had been for both of us. I didn't notice the time until she laughed softly and said, "You know, I always admired you. I just didn't know how to say it back then." Back then, my heart wanted to believe her, but my gut screamed no. Still, when she reached for my hand, I didn't pull away, because deep down, I wanted to know, was this real or just another act? Weeks passed, and Anita became a constant presence in my life again. She'd stay after work, helping me review numbers, laughing about how things had changed. The walls that once smelled like grease and sweat now echoed with our late-night conversations. I told myself it was harmless, two people catching up on lost years. But soon, it wasn't just coffee and talk. It was dinners, lingering touches, and unspoken words that burned through silence. One night, she leaned across my desk, her perfume flooding the air, and whispered, "You deserve happiness. You know that?" Before I could respond, she kissed me. I froze, torn between the man who'd once scrubbed her plates and the man who now signed her paycheck. It felt wrong, but also intoxicating. By morning, guilt crawled over me like a second skin. I was dating someone. Tola, the woman who stood by me through every sleepless night, who shared noodles with me when we couldn't afford rice, who prayed for me when no one else did. She didn't know about Anita. Not yet. At first, I told myself it was nothing, a mistake. But mistakes have a way of multiplying when they're fed by temptation. Anita knew exactly what she was doing. She'd show up in fitted dresses, brushing past me in the hallway, whispering things that made it harder to think straight. And before long, I was sneaking out at midnight just to see her. Then one evening, I came home to find Tola sitting in the dark, holding my phone. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling. "Who's Anita?" she asked quietly. My world froze. I tried to explain. I said it was complicated, that I didn't mean for it to happen. But she just smiled painfully and said, "You worked so hard to build something out of nothing, and now you're letting the same people who broke you break you again." Then she packed her bag and left. I thought that would be the end of it, that the worst had already happened. But 2 weeks later, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Anita wasn't just back for me. She was after something else, something much bigger, and she wasn't working alone. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. The missing invoices, the supplier payments that never reached the bank, the sudden drop in our monthly profits. At first, I blamed my accountant, but the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Someone was bleeding the restaurant dry from the inside. And every trail led back to Anita. One night, I stayed behind after everyone left. I checked the security footage, my hands trembling. What I saw nearly made me throw up. Anita wasn't alone in those late-night inventory checks. Felix, the same manager who'd quit in anger when I took over, was there with her, counting cash, taking boxes out through the back door, laughing. I sat in the dark, my heart pounding like a drum. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation, all over again. The woman who said she admired me, the same one who whispered that I deserved happiness, had been playing me like a fool. And the worst part? I'd fallen for it. Again. The next day, I called an emergency staff meeting. Anita showed up, radiant as ever, pretending nothing was wrong. I waited until everyone settled, then turned the TV screen toward them. The footage played in silence. Felix's face. Her face. The stolen money. Gasps filled the room. Anita went pale. Felix tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "Don't bother," I said quietly. I already called the police. For the first time, Anita broke. She dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face, begging me not to press charges. "Felix made me do it," she cried. "He said you ruined his life. He said if I helped, we could." Her words choked off. I just stared at her, the woman who'd once made me feel invisible, now kneeling before me, broken and desperate. I didn't say a word as they led her away. I just stood there, feeling empty. Not victorious, not proud, just hollow. That night, I locked up the restaurant myself. I walked through every corner. The sinks I once scrubbed, the floors I once mopped, the tables where dreams had died and been reborn. And as I turned off the lights, I whispered to myself, never again. The end. Please like and subscribe for more interesting stories like this. What do you think of this story? Please comment below.